March 26, 1997. It's a bright, clear day in Rancho Santa Fe, one of the wealthiest, most manicured enclaves in San Diego. The palm trees are swaying, the sun is glinting off the tiled roofs of multi-million-dollar estates, and the neighborhood is eerily silent. A 911 dispatcher receives a call from a man named Rio D'Angelo. He's shaken, his voice barely a whisper, telling the operator they need to check on a mansion on Colina Norte. When the sheriff's deputies arrive, they expect a welfare check, maybe a burglary or a medical emergency. But as they step through the front door, the first thing that hits them isn't a sound, it's a smell. It's a heavy, cloying scent, sweet like rotting flowers mixed with antiseptic. They move deeper into the house, their flashboards cutting through the dim, filtered light of the drawn curtains. And then they see it. In the first bedroom, 10 bodies are laid out on bunk beds and cots. They aren't slumped or sprawled in a struggle. They are lying perfectly still, their arms at their sides, appearing as if they are merely napping. Each one is dressed in a dark black tunic and matching sweatpants. On their feet are brand new black and white Nike Decade sneakers. Their faces and chests are covered by a square of royal purple fabric, draped with the precision of a military ritual. As the deputies move from room to room, 10 bodies here, 15 there, they realize they aren't looking at a crime scene in the traditional sense. They're looking at a mass exit. 39 people have effectively checked out of the human race, all because they believed a spaceship was hiding in the tail of a comet. To understand how this happened, you have to understand the man at the center of the orbit, Marshall Applewhite. In the 1960s, Applewhite was a charismatic music professor, a man of God, and a family man. But by the early 70s, his life was unraveling. After a series of personal crises and a stint in a psychiatric hospital, he met a nurse named Bonnie Nettles. Bonnie wasn't just a nurse. She was a student of the stars, deeply into biblical prophecy and the occult. When they met, it wasn't just a friendship. It was a cosmic collision. They convinced each other that they weren't actually human. They believed they were extraterrestrial beings who had occupied human bodies, or containers as they would later call them, to deliver a final warning to humanity. They began calling themselves Doe and T. They wandered the American West, living in tents, recruiting followers at New Age seminars, and telling anyone who would listen that the Earth was about to be recycled. They promised a way out, an evolution to the next level, a literal physical heaven in deep space. By the early 1990s, the group had evolved into something incredibly sophisticated. They weren't just a bunch of UFO nuts in the desert, they were a high-end web design firm. Based in that San Diego mansion, they called their business Higher Source. They were the nerds next door, polite, efficient, and incredibly tech-savvy. They built websites for local polo clubs and small businesses. Their clients had no idea that the professional programmers they hired spent their evenings practicing the process, a rigid monastic lifestyle designed to strip away every ounce of human individuality. The rules were absolute. You had to ask permission to eat. You had to use a check partner so you were never alone with your own thoughts. You had to cut your hair in a specific, genderless buzz cut. You even had to change your name to something ending in "odi," like Surodi or Glonodi, signifying that you were a child of the next level. Du, the leader, even convinced several of the male members to undergo surgical castration in Mexico. He wanted them to be vibrationally pure, free from the human urges that kept them tethered to the earth. The tension reached a breaking point in 1995 with the discovery of the Hale-Bopp Comet. To the rest of the world, it was an astronomical wonder, the brightest comet seen in decades. But to Marshall Applewhite, who was grieving the death of Bonnie Nettles, high from cancer years prior, this was the signal. He told his followers that Ty was on a spacecraft following behind the comet. This was their ride home. The window was closing, and they had to be ready to leave their earthly containers to board the craft. In the final weeks, the atmosphere in the mansion wasn't one of gloom, but of bizarre, terrifying joy. They filmed exit videos, farewell messages to the world. In these tapes, they are smiling, laughing, and speaking with the calm of people going on a long-awaited vacation. "We're going home," one woman says with a beaming smile. They weren't being forced, they were convinced. They packed travel bags with IDs, spiral notebooks, and small change. The The departure was a clinical 3-day operation. They followed a precise recipe, a mixture of phenobarbital hidden in bowls of applesauce or chocolate pudding washed down with a shot of vodka. Then they would lie down, tie plastic bags over their heads to ensure the process finished, and wait. They did it in shifts so the survivors could clean up after those who went first, laying them out neatly and covering them with those purple shrouds. When the world finally saw the footage, the image of the Nike Decades became an overnight icon of cult horror. But the most chilling detail was found on their sleeves. Each member wore a patch that read Heaven's Gate Away Team. They viewed themselves as astronauts on a mission that had finally come to an end. Even more surreal is the aftermath. After the bodies were cleared and the mansion was eventually torn down, the cult didn't entirely vanish. 2 members were instructed to stay behind, to be the anchors on Earth and maintain the group's legacy. Today, nearly 30 years later, the Heaven's Gate website is still live. If you go to the URL, you'll find a site that looks like a 1997 time capsule with glowing text and starfield backgrounds. If you email them, the survivors will still answer you, politely explaining the philosophy of the next level. They are still waiting. The story of Heaven's Gate leaves us with a haunting question about the nature of belief. These weren't stupid people. They were doctors, nurses, and engineers who were so hungry for a sense of purpose that they followed a man into the dark. It makes you wonder, in our modern age of digital echo chambers and extreme isolation, how far would you go to feel like you finally belonged to something, even if it was out of this world? What do you think was the ultimate point of no return for these people? Was it the moment they changed their names, or the moment they looked at a comet and saw a rescue ship?